Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna. This is Coffee Books and Bullet Journals. It's finally time to talk about my favorite books of 2020. Okay, I've been waiting for this video all year, basically. Well, not really, but this is my favorite video to film. This is my favorite time to talk about the books that I have loved this year. Every single one of these books has meant something so special to me. All of these are 2020 releases. This is part 2 of my top 20 in 2020, but I 100% think that these books, at least the top 3 or 4, maybe 5, would still, even if I combined them, would still be the top 3, 4, or 5. I have no doubt about that. Every single one of these means something to me. These books spoke to me in such a personal way, and I mean, obviously I loved them. They're my favorite books of the year. I found some all-time favorite books, books that rival The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo are in this stack. I had a really good reading year, and I'm so happy that I kind of fell into some of these books, and I found some books that I truly, truly love. Most of these are not going to be a surprise to you, especially if you have been watching my channel for any length of time. They're not going to be a surprise at all. So I have 3 honorable mentions, and then I will be doing my top 10, starting with number 10 and ending with my favorite book of 2020. So let's get started. Coming in at the first honorable mention is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. I am just as surprised as you are that this is on this list. I don't think that it could crack into the top 10, but it did the job that it was supposed to do. I am very hit or miss with Christina Lauren. I've loved books that they've written. I've had books hit top books of the year or whatever, but then I've also had books that irritated me to my core being. So this book really was one of those high points. I really enjoyed this. I love the fact that it took place in Utah, in Salt Lake City. You know me, you know I like those type of books that I can actually physically picture. When they're talking about downtown Park City, I've been there multiple times. I go there quite often. So it was really cool to be able to see those things, to be able to picture it. That book did what it needed to do in my personal reading, in the fact that I was kind of coming out of a really long reading slump, and it kind of reinvigorated my need of romance. I started reading a whole bunch of smut after this. Overall, it was a really enjoyable experience, and I had a good time reading it. The second honorable mention is Once and Future Wishes by Alex E. Harrow, and this book was so beautifully written. It was just lyrical and mystical and spooky, haunting, but not in a jump scare kind of way. It was just that magic, touch of magic. It wasn't high fantasy or anything like that, but it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. This is a historical fantasy, which I was hesitant to go into because I don't generally like historical fiction, but this takes place at the time of the suffragettes, and these witches, which were a family of witches, they're all sisters, ended up playing this huge instrumental role in allowing women to vote. And it was interesting to see this alternative history where you're not necessarily it's not actually fact, it's not true, but you always have that thing in the back of your mind of what if that's what happened. So this definitely sparked some of those questions. This is one, though, that I do not recommend on audio. I've talked about this before. There's music at the beginning of every chapter, and if you're listening to it on anything higher than 1 or 1.25 speed, it does sound a little funky. And then the last honorable mention, which just almost snuck into the top 10, and that is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is her debut into the thriller genre, and it was fantastic. It was so scary in a way that I didn't think about. It's, as someone who's white, I don't have to think about gentrification and things like that. And so like really getting into this person's head was just terrifying and haunting. It was so good. My only concern with this book, and the only reason that it's probably not on this top 10, is that Alyssa Cole is primarily a romance author, and so like she wrote this romance into it that I don't think it needed, and that's literally the only reason. Like my only complaint with this book. But it was so good. It's being equated to Get Out. It's about this woman whose neighborhood is basically being gentrified and someone's trying to come in and buy properties, and then we're trying to figure out where the neighbors are going, and it's like the plot twist is just so good. It's just terrifying. Moving into my top 10 books of the year, coming in at number 10 is another thriller. I read so many good thrillers this year. If you watch my backlist, best backlist books, I had at least two thrillers on there, and I don't even remember, maybe 3. And then I have a thriller on this list. So coming in at number 10 is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This has been getting really mixed reviews on BookTube, and I think it's those that love it, love the hell out of it, and those that don't really like it. And that's okay. Like, that's the cool thing about books, is that it's okay if one person likes it and one person doesn't. Books are subjective. Books are art. I happen to really like this book. I listened to the audiobook of this on a road trip, and I think I finished this whole audiobook in a 24-hour period. I could not put it down. This has so many plot twists. Riley Sager is the king of a plot twist, and then just when you think that that's the plot twist, he drops another one. My mind was blown by this book. Lock Every Door, I don't remember if it made my top 10 last year. I haven't gone back and watched that video, but it either just missed it or it made the bottom, like the top, number 10 spot. And this one's better. This one is way better. And in a field of 2020 where like all of these books are freaking amazing, this book definitely came to steal the show. It is about a woman who inherits this house that people think is haunted. Her father wrote a book about it, and you're going back and forth. And I don't usually like split timelines, but I loved this. So you're going back and forth between the book and the chapters that are happening as it happens in the book, and then I think it's 20 years later when she's back at the house. And it's just, every single time you think, is it paranormal? Is it not? Is there actually a ghost in this house? Like, this could happen. So this was just, so good. The audiobook was fantastic. I'm going to really try to stop saying I highly recommend these books, because like they're on my top 10 books of the year. So obviously I recommend them. But this was a ride and a half. Coming in at number 9 is the first of only 3 YA titles on this list this year. So I had 7 adult books and 3 YA and no middle grade this year. So I don't know what that says about my reading. I know I read a lot more adult titles this year, so I guess it's pretty proportionate. But anyway, first of 3, and that is The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. This is a young adult, like, contemporary sci-fi. This is very much more character-driven than it is world-building or even plot-driven, but this is about a futuristic society where any form of art or expression is banned. So that means that things like music and books are banned, not allowed in this society. And this girl has a hidden library that's secret, that she's able to give out books to people that want to read. And then she encounters an alien who has found pop music and is trying to learn more about it. And it's just this beautiful friendship of these two characters. It's really, really good. The representation in here is amazing. The main character is plus size. As far as the queer representation of this, I have seen some people saying that she was pansexual, some saying that she was demi-ace. I don't remember specifically, like, on page if they give a label to it, but a lot of the descriptions that she says or that she talks about could be either one. So this was really, really good in such a quiet way. This book does not put a bow on the top. It doesn't like wrap everything up nicely. It's definitely like open, I guess. It's really hard to like explain. I mean, I can't explain the ending without spoiling it, but just know that going into it, you're not going to get a nice big bow on the top. Coming in at number 8 is another YA title, and this is another one that like was one of 2 books that like made me tear up a little bit. Not that it was a sad book. Like, this book brought me so much joy. I listened to it in one day. The audiobook is phenomenal. It is narrated by the author, and that is The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. I don't think this was originally on my top 10 list, but the more I heard people talk about it, I was watching other people's favorites, and they kept putting this book on here, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, no, this deserves to be on this list. This book is about a boy who discovers the drag community and becomes a drag queen, and it is his journey through that and discovering himself, discovering his identity, discovering who he loves, and it's just beautiful. Like, this story is just it's so good. Like, it was just amazing. I don't know what to say about this book. It is a very short book. Like, obviously, like, it's all in verse, but this is just a book that blew me away. And I mean, I loved it when I originally read it, and then like I kind of forgot about it. But then now, like, even now talking about it, I was just like, yeah, no, I love this book so much. It was so good, and it came at just the right time for me. Coming in at number 7 might be the only one on this list that actually surprises you, because I didn't talk a whole lot about it, and that is Head Over Heels by Hannah Orenstein. This one really came out of left field and surprised me. So many people talked about her first novel in 2019, what was it called? Love at First Like, or something like that, and nobody really liked it. So I was very hesitant to go into this. I was given an ARC, and I read it very, very quickly, and then ended up purchasing the Book of the Month edition so that I had a physical copy of it because I loved it that much. And this is a book that I don't think that everyone will like. I don't think it's something that's going to be this widely renowned favorite book of all time, but it was exactly what I needed at the time. This follows a former elite gymnast, and she is now coaching an elite gymnast, and it is the romance between the two coaches, but it is more importantly the mentorship and the relationship between her and her student, or her athlete. This book talks a lot about body positivity, especially among athletes, and as someone who was a former gymnast, that's something that really speaks to my soul, to my person. I definitely felt seen by some of the things that were said in this book, and the mental struggles that she has to go through on a daily basis about food that she eats, and, you know, relaxing on the couch because, oh, you know, heaven forbid that we're not working out, blah, blah, blah. So as someone who was in that world, not to the same extent, but in that world nonetheless, this definitely spoke to me. Coming in at number 6, and my favorite YA title of 2020, is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is the first time that I have absolutely loved an Elizabeth Acevedo book. In the past, I think I've given her like 3 to 4 stars, but this one just spoke to me on like such a different level. This is also another book in verse. Didn't realize I had so many of those on this list this year, but clearly we have found something I like. But this was such a powerful book about family, about choosing who your family is, and it was beautiful. This book is about a girl who has a father who gets into a plane crash. Come to find out, her father has another family in the Dominican Republic with a daughter about the same age as her. And she goes down to the Dominican Republic for his funeral and is able to meet this other family. And it's just a beautiful story. The ending is the only ending, I think, this year that, like, I shed more than one tear. Because I am a robot and I don't have feelings when I'm reading books. But I did listen to this on audio. Elizabeth Acevedo is one of the narrators, and it's just such a beautiful story. And yes. All right, we've made our top 5, and they're all adult titles. They're all a variety of genres. We have 2 romance, we have 2 fantasy, and we have a dark contemporary thriller. I don't know what that says about my reading, but I think it sums up 2020 pretty well. So coming in at number 5 is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This was just harrowing, and I could not put this book down. I finished this so quickly, despite actually being in a reading slump. I think that I read this book towards the beginning of COVID in early April, and I wasn't reading anything else. But I put this on audio, and because I was walking so much. Doyle was a puppy, and so we would go on walks, and I would stick my headphones in, and I just I walked all around we have this park that's about half a mile away, and I would walk all over that park just to get through this book, and it was so good. This book deals with intense gaslighting and grooming, and it is all about this teacher who kind of seduces a student, and then it happens again, I think 10 years later, where he seduces another student, and her the whole time she was thinking that he actually loved her, that they were in this relationship, that even though he was kind of blowing her off the last 10 years, they still loved each other. And then this happens again, and he is trying to get back into her life, being I need you to tell them that this isn't who I am. I need you to tell the police that this isn't who I am, and kind of speak on my behalf. And the mental head games that are going on was just so disturbing, but I was just so sad for her. You were in her head during the times that he's raping her, and this is not a book to go into lightly. It's not a book that I can recommend to everybody at any time, but it was just the amount of chaos and dark, twisted stuff that I'm into, and just I don't know the feelings that I had during this book, because it was just so many. You're almost rooting for this, and then you're not, and then it's it was just you feel for her. You definitely feel for this character, and you understand how she could be in this headspace, in this mindset, and it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart. So, but yeah, this one is definitely one you have to go into with a good headspace. Coming in at number 4 was another book that took BookTube by storm this summer, fall, I guess, and that is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This was the exact book I needed at the exact right time. I read it in September, listened to it on audiobook, and which I don't entirely recommend the audiobook. It was just that I was having such a crazy time at work that's all I was doing. I was in a very weird mental headspace that month, and I was, coming off of a lot of different things that were happening, and then other things starting at work, and it was just a nightmare of a few weeks. This book was the book that 2020 needed, because it was this book is a hug on paper. That's essentially what this is. It's very queer. It's very soft. The book is about this man who cares for orphans and checks in on orphans. He works for the some sort of government agency on checking in on orphans that have magical abilities. And he's sent out to this little house that houses several orphans that are the worst of the worst, including Lucifer, who is the son of the Antichrist or something like that. But he just wants to go by Lucy, and he's just a sweet little boy, and he just wants to be loved. And this is so much about finding yourself and not worrying about what other people are talking about you, what they're saying about you, and just knowing who you are as a person. It's also very queer, but in this soft, quiet way. It doesn't scream it. It doesn't shout. It's just This book is so calming and peaceful, and I don't know how to explain the feelings other than just that, like, that's what it was. This is a hug on paper, and that's what we're going with. My third favorite book that I read in 2020, I read just super recently, a couple weeks ago. I did a vlog on it, and I knew that this was going to be a good book. I just didn't know how good it was going to be, and that is, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. This one skyrocketed to the top of my 2020 list. I had at least my top 5 pretty set in stone going into December. I didn't have everything. I left a couple of spaces open because I did know that I was going to be reading some pretty good books that I was excited about. But this one, just knocked all of those over. And this is where I landed. This is a romance about a plus-size main character who is super confident and super, she's a badass. And then the hero or the love interest is a movie star, and he plays one of the characters on this universe's Game of Thrones. And they both write fan fiction, and they meet each other, and they end up falling in love, as you do in a romance. The one thing that I love about this is that the romantic conflict that always happens in the third act, or about 80% of the way into the book, this one felt so realistic, and it felt justified. I understood why they were talking the way that they were, why they were hiding things. I understood it. It didn't seem like it was drama for drama's sake. It felt real. This character gets bullied and fat-shamed, and these thoughts have kind of invaded her mind, and she's put up so many walls. Someone mentions that they should try the salad at a restaurant, and she automatically thinks it's because they think she's fat, or because they think she needs to eat healthier. And so she has all of these walls up. And as a plus-size woman, it felt so real. I felt seen, and it was so good. I know that this is not her debut, but I think it is a debut as far as being traditionally published. I think the other ones she has written have been backlit or indie published. I could be very wrong about that, but I have downloaded the ebooks for some of her backlist titles because they also have plus size representation, and if I've discovered anything, it's that she knows how to write that. Okay, the top 2 books will not be a surprise at all. Coming in at number 2, and my favorite fantasy of 2020, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I was hesitant to go into this book. Everyone was shouting its praise from the rooftops, and it was one of those things that I was afraid that either I wasn't going to get it, or that it was going to be typical V.E. Schwab fashion, which I love. I love V.E. Schwab, but it's not best book of all time. She definitely has her following that everything that she puts out they love, and I was afraid that maybe that's what this was going to be. But this book was so different than anything that she's ever written. I read this book prior to NaNoWriMo, and I do definitely remember telling my group of friends that we did NaNoWriMo together. I definitely told them, I said, make sure that you do not read this book in November, because you will want to stop writing. This is a higher plane of writing. This is God tier. That's what this is. The writing style is so beautiful. This book is so quotable. I will definitely reread this book in 2021. This is my UK cover. I have the US edition, the Book of the Month edition, and that one is annotated. So I want to go back and annotate this one. This is the Waterstones edition, I believe. So beautiful. And the only book that's not true. One of 2 books in 2020 that I have multiple copies of. This is just a fantastic book, and I cannot wait to reread it, to be honest. This was a book that I think in November, a categories prompt came up that would have fit this book, and I was just I'll just reread it. even though like I literally finished it the week before. So this will definitely get reread in 2021. Coming in at number 1, and my favorite book of 2020, I read 3 times this year, and it is absolutely no surprise to anybody, but that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. This book definitely cured my reading slump in early COVID. I think I read this one, I read it over the weekend edition of the Reading Rush, I think. Like, so whatever that was. That's when I read this. I was given the ARC, and that was the first thing that I wanted to do. I loved Chloe's story. I read that one back in February, and I knew that this one was going to be amazing as well, and it exceeded all expectations. This is about a plus-size main character who is a bisexual witch, and she's the most badass character I've ever read about. That might not be true, but it might be a little bit of an exaggeration. But I love Danny with my whole entire soul, and Zaf is the sweetest, the cinnamon roll. The mental health representation is just so true and honest in this book. Its own voices. Talia Hibbert, I've talked about so many times, and that is, she knows how to write characters. They get their happily ever after, even though they're not perfect, and that's just realistic. The thing is that the romances that we've been reading for decades are all about these stick figure, perfect women that nothing ever goes wrong, and they just, like, you know, they've skyrocketed to the top of their career, or they, you know, have a trust fund, whatever it is. Like, the Brown sisters have worked for everything they got, and it's just, I love this book so much. I will read it again in 2021. Absolutely. And this is definitely, like, without a doubt, my favorite book of 2020. And I think probably could make the argument for the best book of all time. Those were my favorite 2020 releases. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite 2020 release was. And let me know if any of these surprised you. If you are new here and you have not yet subscribed, there is a little red button that you can do so down below the video, and all of the other links to my social media will be in the description below if you would like to be my friend on any other platform. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye. What makes this heart beat faster?